Hello everyone, today I'm going to explain how to apply player movement and camera movement in your character. So let's get started. First, let's add a player movement on your character. So go to your character, click your character, then go to the inspector, add component, then type the name of your script, for example, player movement, then click new script. After that, it will create a player movement script. It's a empty player movement script, and we're going to apply the code for the player movement. So here's the script for the player movement. The script starts with several public and private variables that control movement, jumping, input case, and ground detection. So let's break them down one by one. Firstly, the movement variable, walk speed. This set the default movement speed of the player when they are walking. By default, it is set to 5 units per second or 5 frames per second. Next is the sprint speed. This is the speed when the player is sprinting. It is set to 8 frames per second. Sprinting allows faster movement, which is useful in gameplay mechanics like chasing, dodging, or escaping. Next is move speed. This is a private variable that dynamically switches between walk speed and sprint speed, depending on whether the player is sprinting. Instead of modifying walk speed directly, we use move speed to allow flexibility. Next, for the jumping variables, jump force. This determines how high the player can jump. It is set to 12 frames, meaning when the player jumps, the force of 12 units is applied in the upward direction. Next is the keybind variables. Jump key, the key used for jumping is set to space by default. The player can press this key to jump when they are on the ground. Next is the sprint key. The key is used for sprinting, set to left shift. Holding this key makes the player move faster. Next, for the ground check variable, player height. This defines the height of the player and is used for ground detection calculations. Next is what is ground. This is a layer mask used to determine what surface count as ground. We use this to ensure the player can only jump when touching a valid ground layer. Next is grounded, a boolean variable that checks if the player is currently on the ground. This prevents the player from jumping in mid-air multiple times. And lastly, the other variables, orientation. This is a transformation reference that determines the directions the player is facing. It helps in making movement feel natural based on the player's perspective. Next is the horizontal input and vertical input. These store movement inputs from the player, which are used to determine how the player moves. Next is move direction, a vector that stores the movement direction before applying it to the rigid body. Lastly, the RB or rigid body. This is the rigid body component attached to the player, responsible for applying physics-based movement. Next is the start method. When the game starts, the start method is called. This function does three important things. First is to get the rigid body component attached to the player using get component rigid body. This is necessary because we will be applying forces to it. Second is it freezes rotation using RB.freeze rotation equals to true. This prevents unwanted tilting or spinning due to physics calculation. Third is it sets move speed to walk speed, ensuring the player starts at a normal walking pace. For the update method runs every frame and is responsible for checking user inputs. It does three key tasks. First is the ground check. It calls the ground check to determine if the player is touching the ground. Next is it calls the my input to read player input for movement and jumping. And the third is to handle sprint. To switch, it calls handle sprint to switch between walking and sprinting speeds. For the fix update method and move player function, the actual movement happens inside the fix update because it runs in sync with Unity's physics engine. In this function, we call move player, which calculates the movement direction and applies it to the player. Inside the move player, we determine movement direction using move direction, this code. Then this ensures movement is based on the player's perspective. Then we apply velocity to the rigid body, which is this line of code. This updates the rigid body movement while preserving the current vertical velocity, so jumping works correctly. For the jumping mechanics, the jump function is responsible for making the player jump when they press the jump key, which is space. First, it resets the Y velocity to 0 to prevent stacking jump forces, which is this. Then it applies an up Y force to the player using this line of code. The force mode impulse ensures the game jump force is applied instantly rather than over time. Next is the handle sprint function. When the player holds the sprint key left shift, the handle sprint function increases the movement speed. This line of code. This allows for smooth transition between walking and sprinting based on player input. And lastly, for the ground detection, the ground check function ensures that the player can only jump when they are on the ground. It uses a physics that spear cast to check for ground beneath the player. This is the line of code here. And if the spear cast detects ground within a certain range, grounded is set to true, allowing the player to jump. So after implementing the code on the player movement script, the player movement script will update in the inspector, and all of the public variables you can modify it, change the value. So for example, this walk speed is set to 2. I can set it to 5. Then if I hit play, set it, the walk speed is set to 5. But when I set it to 2, it is slow. Let's restart the game and try that again. Yeah, it's slow. And for the orientation, you need to create a new empty object here in the hierarchy. Just right click here in the player, then create empty. It will create a empty object child here inside of the player. Then you can set the empty object here at the orientation. So that is all for the player movement, and we're going to move to the camera movement. So for implementing the third person camera to your player, you want to create a new script. So go to your main camera in the hierarchy, click it, then add another component, type third person camera, then new script. Then after that, after making a empty script, we want to open it. So this is the script for the third person camera. The script consists of key components that work together to create a smooth third person camera system. Firstly, the camera initialization, setting up the camera settings at the start. Second is aiming system, handling the player's ability to aim. Third is mouse look movement, rotating the camera based on mouse input. And the fourth is zooming mechanic, adjusting the field of view when aiming. Each of these components plays a vital role in ensuring the camera movement is smooth and responsive. First, in the start method, at the beginning of the game, the script locks the cursor and hides it to ensure a seamless third-person experience. Additionally, the crosshair is hidden at the default field of view, or FOV is set. Is good. For the handling aiming, when the player right clicks, the crosshair becomes visible and aiming mode is enabled. Releasing the right mouse button disables aiming. For the mouse look movement, this function allows the player to control camera rotation with the mouse. When aiming, both horizontal and vertical movements are enabled. When not aiming, only horizontal movement is allowed. For the zoom functionality, to create a immersive aiming experience, the field of view gradually changes when the player aims. Going back to Unity, after applying the code, the script will be updated in the inspector, and all of the public variable, you can modify all of the public variable here in the updated code. Firstly, the orientation, like in the player movement, we created a empty object orientation. You can just drag the empty object here. Next is the player, which is the player. Oops. Next is the main camera, which is the main camera. Just drag the main camera here. Mouse sensitivity is the how fast or slow the sensitivity of your mouse. Crosshair is the image of a crosshair. You can just put a or drag a crosshair from your project window to the hierarchy and put it here in the crosshair section. Next is the zoom settings, which is the main camera. Just drag again the main camera. Then adjust the field of view, which is normal is 60 on 60. Then when it's zoom, it becomes 30. And the speed of the zoom, which is 10 frames. Now let's try the third person camera. As you can see, the camera is behind the character. When I hold the right click button, it zooms and it shows the crosshair. Oops, again, sorry. Zoom, and then if I release, the camera is locked and I can only rotate it horizontally. And if I unlock it again and aim it, oops, it will lock on that position. That is all for the player movement and the camera movement. I hope you learned something. And again, thank you for listening and have a great day.